Fall in. Dress right dress, cover down, 4 and 40 all around. It's time for the Abington Veterans Muster. Thank you for joining us on this 13th episode of AVM, Abington Veterans Muster, here for veterans in the town of Abington, the brainchild of the Director of Abington Veterans Services, Adam Gunn. Welcome. Here we go. We're going to pass the word, and I got a lot of word to pass, so please stand by. I want to start off with some breaking news from the Executive Office of Veterans Services. They have redone the benefits calculator for Massachusetts veterans. The Mass Benefit Estimator helps Mass veterans and their dependents determine their eligibility for benefits in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There has been new changes with the HERO Act and the PACT Act and other things with the VA and local and state aid for veterans. So things have changed. Change is constant. So I'll have the link to the benefits calculator in the AVM show post. Go ahead, check it out, see what it's all about, and sign up, get on the board, and see what your VSO can do for you. Moving on, the Executive Office of Veterans Services also has launched the 2025 Acts of Service campaign. This is a statewide initiative across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts where the Executive Office wants people to tell them about veterans in their town, community, where they work, people they work with, people who, flip burgers at the American Legion, people who go out of their way to help other veterans. They want to know about these amazing people. So in the spirit of Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King, and what he stood for and what he represents to America, this idea came about, and they wanted to have people embrace that veteran who has made an impact in a person's life. All you have to do is, again, go to the link. I'll have it in the AVM show post. You can go there and tell the story about a veteran that means a lot to you and your community, in your personal life, or maybe it's somebody you work with that you see, going above and beyond in the workplace to make their work hospitable toward veterans coming back from service or hiring veterans. And this is the first campaign. They're looking for a big, huge turnout. Let's make that happen. There's a lot of people here in Abington who go above and beyond for veterans, so I know that Abington will be well represented for this campaign. Next up is the Massachusetts annuity increase. Massachusetts provides an annual annuity up to 100% disabled veterans, Gold Star parents, and unmarried spouses of deceased veterans. For the first time in 17 years, disabled veterans, Gold Star families will receive an increase in their annual annuity. Thanks to the HERO Act signed by Governor Healy, the annual payments will rise 25%, so it's $2,000. It will now be $2,500 per year, with the first increase happening in February of 2025. It's March as you see this show, and the second increase will be in August of 2025. I'll have the link to the eligibility requirements, how you apply, how this all affects you in the AVM show post. Stay tuned for more information, but also don't delay in getting in on this benefit that is for you and your family if you need it. We have some Abington veteran local stuff here for you this month. We have the Veteran Widow Tax Work-Off Program. So if you're looking to volunteer some time for Abington veterans here in the town of Abington, you can go see Lisa McGovern or Adam Gunn and be a part of the Abington Tax Work-Off Program for veterans here in the town of Abington. You can get an abatement of up to $1,500 per year based on the number of hours you volunteer for veterans in the town of Abington. It's a win-win, right? You're giving your time to help veterans like myself. You're getting an abatement on your taxes, and this benefits everybody here in the town of Abington. And Martin's, and if you look in Martin's, you will see something that kind of reminds you of the Abington Veterans Muster in Martin's restaurant. Martin's, who's serving like thousands of meals now to veterans, will do their breakfast. the first Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. You can come in, get free breakfast if you're a veteran and your spouse, understand what's going on in the South Shore area for veterans, and be a part of a community that is just growing and thriving here in Abington. And I've got to give the Dorsey VFW, I got to give the Dorsey American Legion Post a shout out, excuse me. Dorsey Post 112 is open daily from 2 to 7 p.m. for great drinks, good food, and holds a weekly meat raffle every Saturday at 1 p.m. And look, if you drive by the Lewis Dorsey Post on a Saturday, the place is packed. They've got great cuts of meat, a great system set up for you, and for you to have a good time. Go there, support the post, and get yourself some nice steaks. Absolutely. And then the American Legion meets every fourth Monday at 6:30 p.m. We have the U.S. Veterans Vietnam Era Staff Sergeant Richard A. Fitz chapter is the first Thursday at 2 p.m. And the VFW Old Town Post 5737 meets every third Monday at 6 p.m. Lots going on. Lots going on all the time here in Abington. You don't want to miss it. So stay tuned for more. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to move now to our special guest for this Abington Veterans Muster. And we're back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Got a special guest for you today. It's always great talking with people who not only served in our military, but also, had their transition, their career path journey, and now serve other veterans. And this is a new experience for me because this is kind of a new org in Massachusetts, but I'm not going to delay anymore. I'm going to tell you who it is. So without any further delay or ado, Scott Pitta from the Office of the Veteran Advocate for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Welcome to the Abington Veterans Muster.
Thank you, Travis.
It is great to have you here. I got to tell you, you have acronyms. We have, and we're military, so we love more acronyms. And it's VSO, EOVS, OVA, Chapter 115, all this stuff. And so about 3 or 4 months ago, I hear, hey, there's this new org. And I didn't do my usual, Scott, where if it's new and different, it must automatically be bad. I didn't do that, but I was curious because I'm like, well, wait a minute. What is the Office of the Veteran Advocate when we just now have the Executive Office of Veteran Services? I mean, I know about defense in depth and layering protection, but what is this? And I came to understand it a little bit differently. But start off, before we get into all that good stuff, and it's all good, I want to know who the man is behind the scenes, behind all this going on with this new office. Who are you, and how'd you get into the military, and what's that all like?
I'm a local guy. I grew up in Bridgewater.
Oh, yeah?
So not too far right down the road. Joined the National Guard when I was a junior in high school, did basic training between my junior and senior year. Worked my way up through enlisted, became an NCO, and always had the goal of going to flight school. And so I threw my hat in the ring and I got selected. That was mid-90s, late 90s. Off to flight school I went, came back, initially qualified in the Huey, and then made the transition into the Black Hawk. Flew with the Mass National Guard for a while, and there wasn't a whole lot of jobs around here for helicopter pilots.
Really? I mean, in civilian life, there's not a lot of rotary wing?
Not in New England. Until you really develop your resume and get a lot of experience, then you can get hired by operators in New England, unless you happen to be independently wealthy and can buy your own helicopter and create your own operation. That was not me. So I worked my butt off, and I ended up getting a job as a contract instructor pilot at Fort Rucker, teaching flight school down there. Then I tried to get into the National Guard down there, only to find out the Alabama National Guard didn't accept pilots that were instructors at Fort Rucker, because during the Gulf War, when they mobilized the Alabama Guard, flight school had to shut down because all of the instructor pilots were in the Alabama Guard. So I was in my mid-20s, and my choice was Jacksonville or New Orleans. So what do you think a mid-20-year-old single guy would choose to go to once a month? Yeah, New Orleans. So
Saints go marching.
Yeah.
So tell me, for the people out there, what's the main difference between the Huey and the Black Hawk? People might not know or appreciate that they serve the same role, but they're two very different aircraft.
Yeah, they're very, very different. I say you fly the Huey, you manage the Black Hawk.
Oh, really?
A Huey is push-pull tubes, cables, a big engine, and a big fan on top and a little fan in the rear. You strap it on, and you're maneuvering it. The Black Hawk is, you still have to have those basic skills to fly it, but there's a lot more automation. There's stabilization. You can pick it up to a hover and essentially let go, and it'll stay right there.
Get out.
The stabilization is phenomenal.
I have to ask this of all my Army aviators. What was your first auto rotation like?
It was a blur.
Power and
yeah, it was a blur. The running joke is, when you shut off the big fan on top, the pilot starts sweating. Yes, it gets eerily quiet, and you're just falling out of the sky, and then. Of course, you've got the instructor with you for the first one, and all of just at the bottom end, and they just do some magic, and all of a sudden you touch down like a butterfly with sore feet. Like, how did you do that? I must learn that. And eventually you do that several hundreds of times until you figure it out. One of the best people I ever flew with, Jeff Smith, an old Vietnam pilot, he was my instructor who taught me to be an instructor when I got that job in Alabama. And he had been an instructor at the schoolhouse since '76.
Oh, wow.
To give you an idea of the experience. And boy, he could just do that effortlessly. And it just no ground run, no slide, just, if you closed your eyes, you wouldn't know you hit the ground.
So you just had time to just flared out and
Yeah. It just
gets touched down.
Absolutely amazing to watch that level of experience operate an aircraft. And then being able to take what I learned from those folks, because I was the young guy in the schoolhouse, and I think I just smacked the mic. I'm new to studios, but I'm there with all of these guys that flew in Vietnam and have been flying for decades, and to learn from them, and then to be able to take that with my unit when we deployed, with skills that had long been forgotten in aviation, and to be able to pass those skills along, that was rewarding.
Is that because as aircraft get more advanced and there is more automation, is more fly-by-wire, you don't need to feel the aircraft like you had to back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I always say one of the main reasons the older generation of pilots were so skilled was when they trained, they had this tiny little, it's a Schweitzer 300 or TH-55 piston-powered helicopter that they had to train on, and it was horribly underpowered, and you had to learn finesse. If you didn't, the thing would laugh at you, and then the rotor blade would slow down to the point you could count it going around, and it's just, you're just heading to the ground. So you had to learn that, and you learned to hear it. With the modern aircraft, we have so much power. The Black Hawk cruises around empty, 14,000 pounds with the crew on board and fuel, and you're at sea level, everything's working great, and the max gross weight on that aircraft can be 22 to 24,000 pounds, depending on the model. So you have this huge margin. With the Huey, you had a much smaller margin, and you start putting people in there, and you just don't have that performance capability. It's like, trying to take a motorcycle on up the side of a mountain. The difference between a big cruiser with a massive engine versus, some tiny little putt-putt.
And that's the thing with helicopter flight, unlike aircraft, airplanes is there's all that figures into it. You got to configure air density and humidity and all that, and get your transitional lift right. It's not just the Navy flyboys get all the glories, or they do, but they just go to full afterburner and off they go. Whereas you all are trying to figure out how to get that thing actually in the air and stable, much less hover.
Yeah,
that had to be fun to do.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. If you're going to go to combat, being in charge of a helicopter is definitely a good way to go. You certainly make a lot of friends when you can move people and parts and ammo and food and sometimes maybe some contraband.
Hey, whatever makes it work, sir.
Yeah.
So you do all that and you get very good at your job, but so many times. For whether you're enlisted or an officer, or were you a warrant?
Yes.
Okay, warrant officer. Oh, you're one of those mythical beings.
Yes, absolutely. You saw I brought the coffee when I came in.
You had the coffee. Yeah. Your coffee game is strong.
Yeah.
Everybody has to transition and get out. I mean, there is a start and a space of your career, and you get out. After you work in this high-level, highly skilled profession, what was it like trying to transition out into the civilian world and what you did before you came into the OVA?
Well, the initial transition really wasn't that big of a transition for me because I left active military to be a government contractor on a military base. So it really wasn't that big of a difference. What I didn't realize at the time was leaving the National Guard. After my deployment, I looked at everything. I said, you know what? I want to be here for my kids. I'm gonna take some time off from the military, and thought maybe I'll get back. Never ended up doing that, but we didn't really have that same transition that you get on active duty, where there are classes you go to. Right. No, I was here's some paperwork. Best of luck to you.
Wow. And
out the door I went. I knew nothing about the VA. Absolutely nothing. I didn't even realize.
Being in all that time, nothing.
Yeah, it just never even occurred to me. It wasn't a thought. I knew some people had some benefits from the VA, and I always thought, well, that's just for the people that are really, like the air. We had an air crew that had an unfortunate incident, and the pilots were seriously injured. For folks like that, people that got shot, that was my thought process on it. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on. At the time, looking back, I know I had symptoms of PTSD that I was exhibiting, but I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
Nobody actually sat down and said, hey, let's go sit down and have a conversation over here over a cup of coffee.
To fast forward a little bit, just to understand, you go through this time of transition, not transition, because you're right. For us active duty people, there is hey, you're 6 months from your end of active service, start doing this, and you get out. And you're not the first person who's told me that with reservists and National Guard. It's kind of like you hang up the uniform one day and then you never put it back on.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Office of Veteran Advocate, you go through your civilian journey and now you join this organization that's relatively new.
Yeah.
And different, but not bad. Not bad. Well, change for us veterans is very, trepidation, a lot of worry there, and it's more acronyms.
Yeah, and it had to be a 3-letter agency too.
Right. And started learning about it. I kind of got what was going on here, but for someone who's hearing this for the first time or has these questions, what is the Office of the Veteran Advocate, and how does that fit in with all the other veterans officers in here?
Fair question. The Office of the Veteran Advocate really came about after the COVID pandemic, and we had some really horrific outcomes at the soldiers' homes that the state runs. And the legislature, they wanted a way to have some accountability and really a deep dive into all of the veterans programs. How are they administered? And are we really doing the right thing? Are our programs actually functioning the way that they're supposed to? And there was some debates up at Beacon Hill as to how they were going to do it. Ultimately, it was decided that it needed to be an independent agency. And for those that don't know, an independent agency is outside of the control of the governor. So you have the Executive Office of Veteran Services,
Right.
led by Secretary Santiago,
Yep.
who answers to the governor. Our office is similar to the Inspector General, the Attorney General. We're modeled after the Office of the Child Advocate.
Okay.
And those independent agencies have their own independent head. Ours is retired Colonel Bob Notch, who you've met.
Yeah.
He's appointed for a 5-year term and can only be removed for cause. So the difference there is he's not serving at the behest of the executive branch. He has a job to do. Our statute, Mass General Law, Chapter 115B, lays out what we have to do and what we're expected to do. His job is to accomplish that mission.
And what is your involvement in
Yeah.
in the OVA?
So with the OVA, we look at all of the systems that serve veterans and try to figure out, like I said, what's working, what's not. We don't do direct veteran-to-veteran issues. Prior to coming to this agency, I worked as an attorney for a legal aid organization, Veterans Legal Services.
Okay.
There I would do direct, a veteran would come into my clinic and say, I've got a problem, I'm being evicted. Okay, let me help you fix that issue. Oh, by the way, are you getting your Chapter 115 benefits? Are you getting your VA disability benefit? And do that direct, that direct interaction with them. Here, we look at, are all of the veterans that are eligible for Chapter 115, are they receiving it? If not, why are they not receiving it? Is there, one of the programs I'm looking at right now is TRICARE. Where are the providers in Massachusetts that accept TRICARE? We have the list from Humana that says, here are all the providers that accept TRICARE. We're going through that list line by line and seeing, do these people actually accept it? Is this a current list? If you know anyone in the area that is on TRICARE, one of the common themes we keep hearing is, I can't find a provider. So,
And isn't one of the other things too that providers are one of the first concerns, but also getting reimbursed?
Yeah.
If they, I've heard that's a big problem.
yeah, and that's not unique to TRICARE. It's
Okay.
health insurance in general, but that is an issue that touches all of the veterans in the Commonwealth.
Sure.
That's a systemic issue. So these bigger issues that are systemic, those are the ones that we want to take a look at. The mandate from the statute is making sure that veterans of the Commonwealth are being treated with dignity and respect. Excuse me. Obviously, we have an investigatory function. We do have to look into any veteran that is in the care of the Commonwealth, is the language. If they are in the care of the Commonwealth and there is a death, serious injury, whether it's physical or mental health injury, we have to look into that and see, is this a one-off incident? Is it a systemic issue? If it's a systemic issue, what controls need to be put in place to fix it? And very early on, we had to take that language. What does it mean to be in the care of the Commonwealth?
I was going to ask that. Yeah, what does that mean?
There's the obvious, the folks that are in the soldiers' homes. That's pretty solid, in the care of the Commonwealth. But what about veterans that are incarcerated? They're
in the care.
They're in the care of the Commonwealth. So, okay, how do we make sure that they're being treated appropriately? And it's a difficult issue. because a lot of those folks don't identify as veterans, for various reasons. And we've had this conversation with the folks at DOC that, well, when they come in, they don't want to identify that they're a veteran because maybe it puts a target on their back, or they're ashamed for whatever reason. But if we can find a way to identify them, there are computer systems out there that can identify people as having military service. We do it online with, ID Me.
Yep.
It's a system like that. As they get processed into these facilities, we can flag them, we can identify them, then their local veterans agent can make sure that they're getting all of their VA benefits. The benefit to the state there is if they're signed up for their VA disability benefits, if they're eligible, yes, while they're incarcerated, they get dropped down to 10%, but they still get the medical coverage reimbursed. So now the state can get reimbursed by the federal government for their medical care, any prescriptions, things like that. So there's the benefit to the state where we're potentially losing money. So all of those, there's so much to what we're doing.
How does your role fit into what the OVA is doing?
So as chief of staff, which is a new role for me as of January, I was hired on originally as the general counsel, and then Bob said, this office is, excuse me, our mission is too large. I need someone who can look inward at the team while I look outward to the legislature. So my role is really to manage all of the projects amongst all of the staff to make sure that everything's moving along, that nothing gets lost, because issues pop up so quickly. We'll get a phone call that there was a fatality at a facility, and now we have to scramble to deal with that. Or the Attorney General's office has an issue that they're looking into, and they need a whole slew of records. So things pop up really quick, and we try not to be chasing the shiniest object down the hall. My job is to make sure everybody stays in their lane, stays focused, and if there's areas for interaction amongst the different people in the office, amongst the different teammates, to make sure that interaction is taking place and that the projects are moving along.
So let's just level here, Scott. You're not taking over any other agency or other veteran service officer's job here.
No.
Because I kind of like, well, they could be taking over. They could be taking over. I'm like, well, I don't think that's quite the truth here. I'm looking at this, but we're going to get the real.
Yeah, I've heard that rumor myself. Okay. And I think that stemmed from when we sent out our job posting for our 4 regional liaisons. So we have 4 new regional liaisons for each of the 4 areas of Massachusetts: Northeast, Southeast, Central, and Western Massachusetts. Their role is not to be a veteran service agent. I always try to use the phrase veteran service agent because on the federal side, VSO means veteran serving organization,
yes,
like a VFW, DAV. And in our own statute, we talk about, most of the time it refers to the local municipal veteran service agent. Sometimes veteran service director, depending on how it's structured, but I'm not going to bore you with the statutes. These regional liaisons are a contact point for all of the local legislators. If they have a veteran that comes to them and says, hey, this person walked in my office with this complaint, I don't know where to go with it, help us out. They will then, whatever the issue is, people will walk into their state legislator and say, I'm not getting my veterans benefits. Okay, fantastic. We'll then take that veteran and walk them to the different agencies that can help them. And we're working on a way to do it digitally through a platform called Unite Us, where we put in all of the information and then just digitally refer out to all of the different agencies. If the person, like I said, if they're being evicted, here are the legal aid organizations that can help you. If they're not getting their benefits, here are the different municipal veteran service agent, here's the one for your community that can help you with that, and Chapter 115 and heating oil assistance, whatever it is that you need. We had a veteran who came in a few weeks ago through, the referral came to us through the local veteran service agent. They're the widow of the veteran, and the veteran had passed away recently and they didn't know what to do. So we're walking them through it. And my instruction to my staff is, I said, okay, one of my first jobs was Roach Brothers down in Bridgewater as a grocery clerk. Seems like an aside here, but
right.
we were always taught, day one, a customer says, can you help me? Where can I find salt? And he said, nearly every other grocery store you go to, you're going to get the response, it's aisle 12. And then the person goes back to doing what they're doing. You don't do that here. If somebody asks you where something is, you stop what you're doing, you walk them to that aisle, to that item, and show them the selection. And then ask them, is there anything else you need? I've told the regional liaisons, that is how I want you to approach this when we're dealing one-on-one with a veteran that has, you don't provide the service, but you are the resource to go to that can link them to Soldier On, Vets Inc., Volunteers of America for housing vouchers issues, all of these different agencies that are out there. So their job is to know all of the resources. It's a tremendous tasking that I've given them, but they're up for it.
Let me play this a different way. Let's just say someone calls your office and says, hey, my dad, spouse, significant other is in a facility for veterans, and I think something's wrong.
Okay.
And not only is it me, but I've got like 3 other people who feel the same way. What's the chain of events that happens if you get a call or, hey, not only is something bad happening, I've got pictures, I've got records, I want to talk to somebody like now. What kind of happens when that kind of event comes across your desk?
Yep. So that's a slightly different scenario.
Right.
That falls more under we have a patient safety director / investigator, Nathan Default. He is a former federal law enforcement officer, and he knows how to conduct investigations, and he does them very well. And that would really fall under his role. The first step is really just gathering the facts, because sometimes we do have complaints that'll come in, and the facts don't back up what we're being told. But we go into it with the mindset of, we are going to be curious, not judgmental. We want to look at what are the actual facts on the ground as they are. And we do have the authority to go in and get documents from the different agencies, depending on the type of facility where those folks would be. There's different processes there. And it's still new, so there is some questioning when we go to DOC and say we need records. You're supposed to have a record of all of these veterans, and it takes a while for people because nobody's ever asked for it before because we're brand new. So there is a time lag there, but we'll get all of the records. We review everything, and then essentially, our job is to shine a light on the problem, and we'll publish a report. Just like the Office of the Child Advocate, when they conduct an investigation, they publish a report, and that report is a public document, and it goes to the governor, it goes to the legislature, it goes to the heads of the departments that were investigated, and from there we make recommendations of changes. We can't step into those agencies and make those changes. But largely what we do is we take away that plausible deniability, where at that point those agencies can no longer say, we didn't know.
Well, I think the core theme I'm hearing here is a person's heard, actions taken based on the facts, and then that escalation happens as needed.
Yeah.
I think we could sit here for a couple of hours and just talk about the different aspects of the Office of the Veteran Advocate. But I think for the time we have is you're not here to replace anybody.
No.
You're here to augment what's already there, and you do it in an independent format. You don't answer to the same channels that the EOVS does.
Right.
How can someone contact you or your office if they feel there's a problem, whether it's, an individual or someone at an organizational level?
The best way is email.
Email.
OVA@mass.gov.
OVA@mass.gov.
OVA@mass.gov. That email goes to our entire senior staff.
Okay.
We will all see it, and somebody will pick it up and follow up with you. That is the easiest way. You can get onto our website, mass.gov/OVA. Those are the two biggest ways. We do have a social media campaign. You can reach us through all of the major social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I don't think there's an Instagram one, but that wouldn't serve our purpose too much anyway.
I will have all the links to all the email address and the links in the Abington Veterans Muster show post for this episode. So if you need to reach out, you can. Absolutely.
Great.
Scott, I think it's really cool doing this show, getting to talk to people who served, whether they, were non-infantry, infantry, aviation, whatever they did. They served their country, they served their community, they served the Commonwealth. And then, transitioned out of active service, National Guard Reserve service, but found a way to continue service. And you certainly have as Chief of Staff for the OVA and what they do. And I think it's an example that a lot of veterans get out and they can't find their purpose. But you found a purpose, you stuck with it, and now are serving at this statewide level for veterans everywhere. When you go home at night and you got to think about what you've done for the work week, what's the feeling now serving in this role than being in the cockpit of an aircraft?
I'd say it's shockingly similar.
Really?
My last flying job before I couldn't fly anymore, I flew for Boston Med Flight.
Okay.
So again, still in a way serving. That job was emotionally exhausting. And it's really easy for that compassion fatigue to kick in, and you have to watch out for that. You're dealing with people often at the lowest point in their lives, or having one of the worst days of their lives. Some of the investigative work that we're doing now is the same. But at the end of the day, it's those successes, when you have a big win, when you see a patient comes back. Boston Med Flight would do reunions for some of the pediatric patients, and you would get to see these kids that were very near death come back, and they remembered you, the family remembered you. That was a big win, and that energy would keep you going through all of the bad times. This job can be very draining because we do see a lot of frustration. We see a lot of bureaucracy, but then we get those wins where we do affect change in a positive way. Those wins are what keep me going, and knowing that I'm making a real change for veterans in this community. That I think is really what drives me every day. It's not one of those jobs where I wake up and I say I have to go do this. I wake up now and I say I get to go do this. Even if it's seemingly mind-numbing stuff like reviewing legislation that's been proposed, and make sure that what's the intent of being proposed is actually going to work. Things like that our office does, going through thousands of pieces of legislation, which I know sounds like so much fun for you.
Well, I just want to thank you for taking the time to share with us on the Abington Veterans Muster about the Office of the Veteran Advocate and these important issues you all face to serve our veterans. I can't imagine the scope of what you all are doing just starting out, but I think the progress made over time is going to be exciting to see. So thanks again, Scott, for joining us. You all have it right here. I'll have all the information in the Abington Veterans Muster show post. Thank you all for watching. And as we say in the Abington Veterans Muster, you are dismissed.